Bonjour tous et toutes. So in this presentation, I'd like to give a bit of an overview of the work we've been doing the last year in the Brain Body Digital Music Instrument Project. So this is a project with a lot of different expertise, a lot of different people involved. Sèdes, Atau, Tanaka, Alain, Bonardi, me, David and Francesco. And together we embody quite a lot of interest and background in using digital and analog synthesis and neuroscience and instrument design and hardware design and electronic engineering, all for the point of several objectives. So can I go still back on the previous slide, please? I'll do. I just wanted to mention that these different institutes are all involved and that this project has been funded by the ANR for 3.5 years. So we're now in the beginning of the second year. So a nice moment to evaluate what we've been up to. So the main objectives of the project are to investigate how we can make music using electrophysiological signals, especially from the body and from the brain. And the further goal is to actually create an instrument that can be used by the general audience, as well as by musicians and expert composers. And we want to do this, and we are doing this in a very user-centered and very inclusive cycles of design, of interaction, where we deal with experimental musicians, people who teach music, who compose, as well as through interactions with the general audience, and also very much involved in neurodiversity. And another important point is that we develop everything in an open source framework so that everything we do can be shared and can be used and will be documented as such. Oops. So just a quick note on, what do I mean when I talk about brain and body activity? So of course the background is the electrophysiology and how to record brain activity using electroencephalography. This is non-invasive. This uses generally CAPS, for example. And what we're measuring is the synchronous activities of many tens of thousands of neurons firing at the same time, generating an electrical field, electromagnetical field that we can pick up with these sensors. And so there are different ways in which one can record and analyze EEG, but we're mainly interested in those continuous signals in the EEG that reflect cognitive states, especially those that reflect attention, something that can be either voluntarily controlled or involuntarily modulated by the environment or by the music. EMG is recorded with electrodes on the muscles, therefore much more precise. We know what we're measuring exactly. That might be voluntarily controlled, might be involuntarily controlled. And that those signals are in the broadband frequency range and can be also picked up and used in creating control signals for music generation. So in our lab, in our study, we are developing on the one hand the hardware, especially on the EMG side until now, but we're now moving towards EEG amplifiers. The EMG devices that we're using are developed by our team a little while ago already. It's called the EV board. It has several channels, and it's quite an impressive system, which has also some abilities of synthesis and of signal processing on the boards and can be used as a MIDI and audio compliant device. Of course, this can be done wireless, which is important if you want to move around. And also for EEG, we're using either consumer devices or more laboratory grade equipment, especially the GTEC Unicorn. And the photo you see here is that of Francesco using our Mental Lab system that we've been happily borrowed by their company. So as I said, it's within an open science framework where we develop, and that's something I want to present today, a repository with a very user-friendly and didactic approach to allow users to create music and compose with EEG and EMG signals. And we do that on the one hand in Max for rapid prototyping. It's easy, it's quick. But then also we use Faust. Who is aware of Faust as the programming language for music? Okay, quite a couple. Well, it's a very elegant and high quality way of, I can go back. Voila, for developing signal processing and sound synthesis. And it also makes it able to port on many different devices. In this repository, we have a nice modular architecture, which allows you to understand the different steps involved in going from electrophysiological signals to music and sound. For example, we can deal with a lot of different inputs, a lot of different devices, EEG and EMG devices, using many different protocols. We have different ways of extracting interesting features out of that signal, then use that to control different aspects of sound synthesis, do the sound synthesis, and then also provide different ways of outputting, either directly to audio or using MIDI or OSC to control other synthesizers and other software. So I just want to give you an example of one of the patches you can download. On the left, there's an example where everything is already connected for you, so you can kind of understand the step-by-step process coming from different recorders, either the EV board, for example, on the right, or we can have pre-recorded signals. We can even simulate EEG and EMG to make it easier for you to develop a composition without having to attach all the electrodes every time. Then we can extract a feature like the root mean square of a signal. We can calibrate it, which is very important to allow a good dynamic range on the next step, which might be the sound synthesis or just putting it into another sound engine. We can, for example, also control another max patches or analog synthesizers, which we do a lot as well. We also have some advanced modules that I want to showcase. So one of the goals of this project is not to use EEG and EMG separately, but to see how we can integrate signals and features and information from both those modalities. So we can use regression analysis or machine learning to extract different states, muscular and brain states, and morph between these different states in a performance. And once you start working with these systems, you also realize that there are not that many features in the EEG and EMG. We're not coming up with 20 controllable features. What we're coming up with is maximally a handful. And to create interesting instruments from only those couple of features, we're also developing synthesis algorithms or instruments that allow us to plug in many different aspects of that sound synthesis, for example, in a granulator, to modulate subtle and more extreme effects in a very interesting and creative ways, so that you can really explore the sound textures that you find interesting to play with. Now we have, over the years, done many user studies, many performances, workshops, concerts, and I want to just mention a couple to give you a sense. So within MSH Paris Nord, we have a beautiful laboratory with ambisonic sound systems, which many of the engineers and researchers in the team are very expert in. And we, for example, use either EMG as an active control, modulating the sound of a musician playing the cello here, or we just let this go, we modulate it, and the person is not trying to control their muscles specifically. That's called a passive paradigm. We can do concerts. We've been doing concerts with also duos, so two people modulating EMG, either for their own synthesis, their own composition, like Atau doing here, and then with Robin of Sika Noise, who is then controlling analog modular desktop synthesizer, a Benjamin. And so we can also play with how we can actually compose and perform together. And then at the end of COVID, we did one performance, which I'll show you in a second, where Atau, who's based in London, is playing his piece, which the audio and the control signals from the EMG, the features, are sent over internet to me in live. I modulate it with my modular synthesizer, and I do that using my EEG, and then we stream that to a conference in Portugal. So there's a lot possible. So maybe let's see if the video starts. And hopefully with sound. So this is me at home, Atau in the corner. Atau has two EMG systems on his arms and is playing his piece, creating sound as well as those control signals from our software. They're both streamed towards my modular, where I use his control signals to modulate my sound that I create with my EEG on the modular synthesizer. And the whole thing is then streamed. Here on the left you see the EEG and the spectral content of that EEG over time. I use those several frequency bands to then modulate aspects of the sound. And I do that actually with an intermediate step of transforming these OSC signals into DC audio signals for my modular using pure data. And here we have a mixed music paradigm where we have Amelia Mazzarico playing a guitar flat. And here using her EMG in an active way to strike the guitar and then modulate the reverberation and the effects of that guitar. So what we often see is that musicians start to feel like they have an extra, more evolved instrument that they can strike, and then when normally the sound is gone, they can still play with it. And so the whole activity actually becomes also very performative. Okay, great. So I think one of the next steps that we're going to work on this year is, first of all, the repository that I'll show you in next slides will be open in a couple of days. So users can start using this, our code base. And what you all hope you'll see is that it's well documented and it has very didactic approach to help everybody use these complex signals for their composition in a fun way. We'll also start using importing the EEG signal analysis into Max. Either Max or Faust. We're now using still Python code to do that, but it would be nice if we can do more complex EEG analysis within software that I think more of you understand and can play easily with, rather than having to work on both Max, Python, etc. We'll be working more on the hybridization using machine learning and more performances and workshops to try out user cases and explore what people would like to do. Because we don't want to enforce people how to use it or how it would sound. The whole point is that we open up this conversation with the users that we invite, and then we take the development as a consequence of that. We've also started with the hardware design, both in terms of the electronics of an EEG acquisition device in an open hardware context, but also start working on the industrial design, if you like, how to attach the system, how will the cap look, how will the armbands look, and things like this. And yeah, so that is a big thank you for your attention. If you want more information, thanks. Check out our website, but then if you want to have a bit of a sense of this EEG music and what we've been doing in the last 10 years, you can also, for example, look at eegsynth.org. So that gives me 14 minutes and 20 seconds, so that's 40 seconds for a question, I think.
Bravo Stéphane, bravo, c'est une performance. Merci beaucoup. Est-ce qu'il y a une question, puisqu'il faut récompenser les performances? Il y a une question ici. On va vous apporter un micro de ce pas.
Is there a question? Yes, there is a question over here. we'll bring you a microphone. We need to have a microphone because we are broadcasted live.
Use therapeutic use, if that would be that's often a question, but we are interested in using it in creative ways for people with, for example, mental cognitive difficulties.
Hi, thank you.
Yes.
I don't think this is about therapeutic use, but just when you did mention neurodiversity, could you speak more about the connection and the modality of this work in light of neurodiverse brains? Thank you.
Right. So I think so we are working with school and also some artists on the autistic spectrum, and I think what we get out of this interaction is to be able to provide other ways of expressing, creative expression, which, for example, requires less muscle activity or less controlled muscle activity, or at least less control on the extremities, but also to create a further way to explore perhaps their own mind and their own way of engaging with music. It's in this way I think we are looking at it. Second one, before he says anything.
Il a raison, il a raison. Deuxième.
Absolutely, he's right. Second question.
Bonjour, merci Stéphane pour la présentation.
Thank you very much, Stéphane, for this presentation. In French and English.
When we see you with the EEG helmet during the videos, you like making efforts, thinking, or through experimentation and training, have you been able to develop some skills or tricks to control the sounds? And anybody, it's up to anybody. It's like an exploration of what you can do with your brain, and then later on you can reproduce some patterns.
Yeah, I think there's several points here. One, it definitely needs some training, some practice, and so that's important, and we have to realize that. So, but with a couple of hours, people are able to modulate their attentional state, for example, pretty easily. How they do it is up to them. But this generally gives us already a sense of connection with the sound. So it's really this resonating. You close your eyes, for example, and you hear the sound modulate together with your own internal state. In terms of exact control, your attentional state is not only under your own control. So it is also an interesting exploration of voluntary, involuntary changes. And then there's an aleatoric, random element to it, of course, as well. It's still a rough measure.
Merci beaucoup Stéphane. Bravo.